For more than 50 years, the Farmingdale Observer covered high school sports and local festivals on Long Island, New York. It was a real paper, with real journalists, covering a real community. In 2022, it went dark, frozen on the same stories, quietly forgotten. Then, in May of 2024, it came back to life. New articles every day, none of them written by a human being. Someone had acquired the lapsed domain, hijacked its decades of credibility, and connected it to an automated content system producing articles around the clock for an audience that would never read them. The real target was the algorithm. The Farmingdale Observer was not an isolated case. As of June 2026, the media intelligence firm NewsGuard has identified 3,749 websites operating as AI content farms, sites producing artificial content at scale without human editorial oversight, without disclosure to readers, in 16 languages, across every region of the world. That number has more than doubled in a single year. Between 300 and 500 new sites are appearing every month, and that figure represents only the sites researchers have found. The original dead internet theory claimed that much of online activity had quietly been replaced by automated systems. When it first circulated years ago on the fringes of the internet, most people dismissed it. The evidence was thin. The claims were speculative. The theory felt like the kind of thing that circulated among people who had decided the world was stranger than it appeared. What those people did not anticipate was that they would eventually be proven partially right. Not through conspiracy, not through hidden coordination, but through something far more ordinary: incentive. The mechanics are not complicated. The internet rewards engagement. Engagement generates advertising revenue. Advertising revenue scales with volume. And volume is something machines do better than people. In a 2-month study period, NewsGuard documented 141 major brand names placing programmatic advertisements on confirmed AI content farm sites. Companies with no idea their budgets were funding the infrastructure of synthetic information. The sites themselves often carry names designed to suggest legitimacy: Times Business News, Business Post, local variants of trusted mastheads. In October 2025, an AI content farm called News24 published a report claiming Coca-Cola had threatened to pull its Super Bowl sponsorship over a halftime performer. Coca-Cola was not even a Super Bowl sponsor. The story was entirely fabricated. Advertisements from Expedia, AT&T, YouTube, Priceline, Hotels.com, Skechers, and GoDaddy all ran on the site. The fabrication did not require a writer. It did not require an editor. It did not require a journalist to make a decision about whether something was true. It required a prompt and a publishing button. This is not limited to commercial operations. In 2026, NewsGuard identified 358 AI content farm sites linked to Storm 1516. a pro-Russian influence operation running websites deliberately designed to resemble local newspapers in the United States and Europe. Not tabloids, not obvious propaganda. Local newspapers, covering local communities, publishing local-looking stories, indistinguishable at first glance from the real thing. The goal was not necessarily to persuade. Sometimes the goal was simply to exist, to occupy space in the information environment, to generate the appearance of consensus where no consensus existed. In late 2025, a journalist at the Nieman Journalism Lab began investigating a specific pattern. An Icelandic teacher named Maria Hjálmtýsdóttir had written a column for The Guardian about her country's experiment with a shorter working week, a personal piece, full of specific detail, the kind of detail only someone who had lived an experience could provide. In the months that followed, her essay was stripped of that detail, repackaged, and republished at least a dozen times by websites almost no one had ever heard of, under fabricated bylines, with fabricated quotes attributed to her directly, quotes she had never said. One version published her as saying, "The shorter working week has been a great success in Iceland and has changed my family's life." She said no such thing. A real person, a real experience, reprocessed into content, attributed to a name that appeared human, published on a site that appeared to be journalism, visible on Google, recommended by algorithms, encountered by readers who had no reason to question whether anyone had actually written it. For most of human history, communication implied a person. A message implied a sender. A review implied a customer. A comment implied an opinion someone had actually formed. Those assumptions were never perfect, but they were close enough to function. Societies built systems of trust on top of them. Reviews determined what products people purchased. Comments shaped what ideas spread. Local news determined what communities understood about themselves. Today, 58% of global news consumers report worrying about their ability to distinguish real information from fabricated information. That number is not a reflection of irrational fear. It is a rational response to a documented shift, because the signal remains. The reviews are still there. The comments are still there. The articles are still there. What has changed is the certainty of what is generating them. The original dead internet theory imagined hidden actors deliberately replacing human activity online. A coordinated replacement, a deliberate deception at scale. Reality turned out to be more mundane, and perhaps more unsettling. No coordination was required. Human beings built the tools themselves, then connected those tools to platforms designed to reward the behavior those tools could perform best. Volume, speed, constant output, frictionless production. The internet does not distinguish between human-generated content and machine-generated content. It rewards engagement. It distributes what the algorithm determines is relevant. It recommends what prior behavior suggests a reader might click. A synthetic article satisfies those conditions as effectively as a genuine one, often more effectively, because it can be produced in seconds, optimized for search terms before it is published, and reproduced across dozens of sites before a single human journalist has finished a first draft. The internet still contains human voices. Millions of people are still creating, still writing, still sharing ideas that belong to them. But for the first time in the history of communication, they are not the only voices in the network, and the proportion is shifting. Not through force, not through a moment anyone can point to as the moment things changed, through accumulation. One generated article, one hijacked domain, one fabricated quote attributed to a real person, one local newspaper that was never a local newspaper. The transition is already underway. The question is no longer whether it is happening. The question is how far it has already gone. And as always, this is Ghost in the BIOS. And until next time, stay human.